Hello, how's it going? It's Addison with Boxing Explained, and you guys, I think 2023 is going to be a great year for boxing. We've got a bunch of really exciting fights either confirmed for early on in the year or very close to being finalized. So if you're new to the sport and you just started watching it, I think you're in for a really good year. It's going to be entertaining, and if you're like me and you've been watching it for a long time, then you've got a lot to look forward to. But I wanted to make this video for some of you new folks to go over some of the more confusing stuff in the sport and clarify it before these fights come around so you can really enjoy them. When I was new to the sport, I was so lost. Everything was so friggin' confusing. I couldn't really enjoy the fights I was watching because half of the time I just had questions about what the hell was going on. So I wanted to make this video for you guys, and then, for the old heads like me and all you old boxing fans, sit back, enjoy, get a little refresher on some of the more confusing things, and watch me try and stumble through explaining it. So boxing as a concept is really simple. You hit the guy in front of you and you try not to get hit back, and at the end of the day, if you hit the guy more than he hit you, you won the fight. And it's still like that today, but it's become so refined over the last 200 years that it's really the inches that win the match, not big leaping movements, but both the devil and God are in the details in boxing. And that's what makes watching a fight in the ring so fun. But outside of the ring, there's a lot of factors that are equally as confusing as what you're seeing during a match. And I think we should start with number one, why there are so many championship belts in boxing. And the simplest explanation for this is that there's multiple commissioning bodies. So if you think about the UFC, they are a single commissioning body. So they only really need one belt. But boxing has four major ones, and that's the IBF, the WBC, the WBO, and the WBA. And each one of these commissioning bodies has their own respective belt. And then to make things a little bit more confusing, Ring Magazine has their own belt, but they're not necessarily a commissioning body. They give the belt to the lineal champion, and the lineal champion is basically the guy who beat the guy. So if you look at Tyson Fury, for example, he won his lineal championship because he beat Vladimir Klitschko, and Vladimir Klitschko had previously won the lineal championship in the same manner. So that's how you'll win the Ring Magazine belt, but the other belts work a little bit differently. They use ranking systems, and the ranking systems are basically exactly what they sound like. They rank the best boxers in each weight class. How they rank them is a point of controversy within the sport, but I mean, it is what it is. There's not much we can do about it. But basically, the number one ranked contender is the person who should have a shot at the title. So let's say the WBC has named Canelo Alvarez as the number one contender for the WBC championship. He should be the next one in line to challenge the title holder. And I think that is a good baseline understanding. You can always learn more about it. It's a pretty intricate part of the sport. And some of these commissioning bodies, they have multiple different belts for each weight class. So you'll hear an interim champion. And that basically means that they're almost a temporary placeholder while the champion is maybe in another weight class, or they're trying to figure out what's the deal with the real championship belt. So you'll see a whole bunch of stuff like that happening. But honestly, you don't need to know that right off the bat. You just got to know why there's so many belts. So to put a bow on this point, I just want to go over the couple of different ways you'll hear champions referred to as, and I'll start with lineal because we were talking about the ring belt and the lineal champion already, but it's the man who beats the man, and it's basically a way to track who the heavyweight champion is who beat the previous heavyweight champion. In this example, we're using the heavyweight class, but the lineal championship exists in most classes. So this goes back all the way to the first champion. So the first champion gets beaten by a guy, he becomes the lineal champion, even if he doesn't necessarily get a belt from it. And then when he gets beaten, the next guy becomes a lineal champion, and it kind of traces all the way forward to the present day. Now, if a lineal champion retires without getting beaten, basically the number one contender and the number two contender will be able to fight to get that lineal championship. And then sometimes you'll hear a champion referred to as unified, and that just means that they have more than one belt in a specific weight class. So let's say a middleweight has 3 of the 4 championship belts. He's a unified champion in the middleweight division. Now, if you're undisputed, that means that you hold all 4 of the major belts in that class. So let's say that middleweight champion who had 3 belts went on to win another fight where he picked up that final belt. He then goes from a unified champion to an undisputed champion. So that's enough of that. Let's just move on to number 2, and this is going to be all about how boxing matches get scored. And boxing isn't always cut and dry in the way that it's scored. Really, the only definitive moment is either a knockdown, a knockout, or a foul. The rest is up to the 3 judges sitting ringside to score fairly. And since there's usually 3 judges scoring a bout, there's really 3 different perspectives for every single round. And there's baseline criteria for what is a valid point scoring move in boxing, but each one of these judges might have different preferences that kind of influence their decision to attribute points to one boxer versus the other. So judge number 1 might like power, judge number 2 might like accuracy, and then judge number 3 might like defense. So this is why at the end of a fight, you'll hear commentators talking about how that fight was judged horribly or it was judged really well. These preferences can kind of come into the play and influence things in one way or another. So I'll take some time to go over that baseline criteria that I had mentioned, and we'll start with effective aggression. And this is very simple. It's what it sounds like. Fighters score points by going on the attack, but by being successful when doing so. So success in this category doesn't always mean piecing up their opponent with 4 to 5 punches, but if you keep your opponent moving backwards, even if some of your punches are missing, that could be considered effective aggression. Then you'll have ring generalship, and this in a way is similar to effective aggression, but the boxer doesn't always need to be on the attack. If the boxer is moving his opponent around the ring into compromised positions and gets them leaning up on the ropes or in the corner, or is able to slow the fight down and speed it up when they see fit, they possess ring generalship. It could also be seen if a fighter is setting traps, making his opponent miss and then making him pay for it, or making his opponent hesitate by using feints and footwork. If a boxer is doing all this stuff in a match, it means that they have good ring generalship. And then you've got defense, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. If you've got good defense, it means that you can make the opponent miss shots and effectively block the ones that you don't slip, and you'll score points for that. And then you've got clean and hard punching. And again, this one is kind of self-explanatory, but I want to clarify what a clean punch is. And that is when the punch lands with the knuckle part of the glove on an exposed part of the body or head. So anything back of the ears on the head is not clean, and punching someone in the back is not only useless, but again, not clean. Arms aren't clean shots either, because those count as a blocked punch. And if you're punching the guy anywhere below the belt line, you'll probably get disqualified pretty quickly. So that's a pretty high level overview of how a fight is going to get scored. And then the last thing I want to go over with you guys is the different fight styles that you're going to see when you watch boxing. So every fighter is looking to score high points in every one of those categories I went over, but the way they go about doing it is going to be very different depending on their fight style. You know, Sugar Ray Leonard loved to just stick outside with the jab and just pepper the guy with little shots all night. And then, you know, you got a guy like Canelo Alvarez who will just take your head off after a couple of rounds of figuring you out. And that's the way that they win the match. That's how they use their fighting style to their advantage. So since I just mentioned Sugar Ray Leonard, I think boxers or outside fighters will be a good place to start. So, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, a lot of these guys that kind of used a lot of footwork and long straight punches are outside fighters, also known as boxers. So like I said, they like to stay at an arm's distance. They like to hit you with, 5 to 50 punches around if they can, but none of them are going to be massively powerful. They're going to pepper you up with shots, keep you guessing, keep moving, frustrate you, and hopefully make it all 12 rounds without getting touched up very much. They don't really like to get into the kitchen very much and get into big exchanges, but when they're good at what they do, they're basically untouchable. They won't always have a high KO percentage. Don't get me wrong, they can still put people to sleep, but a lot of the time they're going to be winning by lopsided decisions. So the polar opposite of a boxer or an outside fighter is going to be a pressure fighter, also known as an inside fighter. And, Chocolatito Gonzalez and Roberto Duran are good examples of this. They like to be in your face for all 12 rounds. They like a rough fight. They like being right in the pocket, throwing power shots to the body, to the head, changing angles, but not really moving very far away from their opponent. They really exceed when you stand in front of them and bang it out. Then the next one is the power puncher or the slugger. So this is like George Foreman and Deontay Wilder. They're going to be maybe a little bit slow and plodding, but they hit like Mack trucks. They might not have the best technical ability or footwork or any of that, but like, who cares? They're going to knock you out before the fight is over anyways. And if you make it to the end of the fight, you'll probably win against them, but you'll be absolutely battered and bruised. And then the last one is my personal favorite, and that's the boxer puncher. So these are kind of like the boxer outside fighters if they also hit like a power puncher or a slugger. These guys bring a little bit of everything into the ring with them when they fight, and they're a ton of fun to watch because they'll stick and move for the first couple of rounds, but once they start to sit down on their punches, they will hurt someone. So for me, I love watching this fight style. Think of Artur Beterbiev, Canelo, Bivol. These guys are boxer punchers. And I think that's where I'm going to leave things off for today. I think that's a pretty good clarification for these points. There's a ton of stuff like this that I can talk about. So if this is a format that you guys enjoyed watching, then let me know in a comment below and I can kind of turn this into a running series. There's so much stuff like this in boxing that we could probably talk about it for a long time. Anyways, I'm Addison with Boxing Explained. I hope to see you guys at the fights and have yourself a wonderful day.